hear from you more. I mean, for example, like, I mean, we always talk about breath support, or if we want to sing high and loud, what should we do? And how Estill can help us from one genre to, I mean, voice quality wise, from one genre to the other one. Maybe you can give us some example today or some explanation today.
Well, I think there are a couple of couple of really important issues that you discussed that you mentioned, and I think the first of which is the role of breath and the role of
Mm,
breathing in voice. There is so much confusion around this. First of all, we need to talk about what we feel in the abdominal wall. We can talk about that. Perhaps even before that, we should talk about how much breath we actually need to produce voice. And the truth is, we need very, very little air to produce voice, because voice is
mm,
based on vocal folds closing and turning the breath into voice. And one of the things that I do in my workshops is I get people to put their hand in front of their mouth and to whisper, and you can all do this. The vocal folds are open. The vocal folds are open. We can feel the vocal folds. We make this little silent tap. When the vocal folds open, we can breathe. When the vocal folds close, we can't breathe. When they're open, we can breathe. And when you do this into your hand, we can feel quite a lot of air. What if we make that a vowel? Uh-oh, E, A. Suddenly, we're not feeling the same amount of air at all. And
mm,
this absolute basic, I don't mean obvious or easy, but this is a fundamental principle of voice production, which is the vocal folds have to close. And in closing, the breath is resisted. And voice production is based on the ability of the vocal folds to resist breath efficiently. So the vocal folds close, the breath is held back. Some air is coming out, but much, much less than we think, and you can feel it here. And often, people are told we need more breath to get higher and louder. No, we don't, because we come back to vocal fold closure. The vocal folds close and open. This is a vibration. The number of times they close and open gives us pitch. This increases as we go higher in the range. So middle C, C4, the vocal folds close and open. We don't get a lot of breath coming out. The breath gets magicked into voice, as I call it. Not magic, it's physics, but physics is a kind of magic. And so the breath gets magicked into voice, which is why we don't really feel very much on the hand. We feel warmth, but we don't feel a high airflow. The higher we go, the more vibrations per second. So middle C, as I said, is, I didn't say how much it was, but middle C is 262 closing and openings a second, just for pitch. The C above that, C5, it doubles, 524, right? The C above that, that's really pushing it for a high operatic lyrical soprano. That is 1047 cycles a second. This is the basis of voice production, and it's got nothing to do with how high the effort in terms of pitch is very much to do with the voice type. For a baritone, C4 is starting to really get there, so it's relative to voice type. So for a baritone, C4 is starting to feel pretty effortful. The above that is 330 cycles a second. The A above that, A4, the A that the orchestra warms up, 440 cycles a second. This is usually at the point when I say to people, who cares? Well, because this is the basis of the absolute fundamental of voice production. Your vocal folds can't close 262 times a second, which is middle C, 330 times a second, which is the E above middle C, 440 times a second just for pitch, A4. They can't close that many times a second if air is blowing them apart. And this is the absolute basis. I'll just repeat that. I think there was a little pause there. But
yeah.
this closing of the vocal folds is the absolute, what I describe as first principle of voice production. Before breath, closure. We need closure. And we need very, very little breath to stimulate this closure. And if there is too high airflow, then the vocal folds can't close. And then
Mm,
and it only needs to be a little bit too much to really put the voice under pressure. And this is just for pitch. We haven't even started to talk about volume. And this is where, once again, Estill makes this so clear. We want to make a louder sound. What is a louder sound? A louder sound is a more intense wave of sound pressure, what the vocal folds are producing. And to do that, the vocal folds within that closing stay closed for longer. And this creates some more intense pressure below. Once again, there isn't more breath that comes out, but this turns into a more intense wave of sound pressure. And Joe Estill's research showed that in belting, the vocal folds stay closed for up to 70% of each cycle. They stay closed, and they need to stay closed to get the buildup of pressure, not because more air is coming out, but because it turns into a more intense wave of sound pressure, a louder sound. So we need less breath to go high in the range, less breath, but more muscular engagement to help stabilize what's happening at laryngeal level. Support, we can call it support, but pushing is not support. And pushing your abdominal wall does not support the diaphragm. Who even knows what that really means, right? We can't feel the diaphragm. Pushing is not support. It causes trauma to the vocal folds, and it causes a range of compensatory behaviors that makes voice production much, much harder and much less sustainable and much less fun. That's the other thing. Let's not forget that. It just is less fun and less agility. It impacts repeatability, which is so important. So breathing is important. It really, really is. Just not in the way that so many people misunderstand. And this is the science on which Estill voice training is based. And it's turning around a ship, and it's slowly, slowly starting to change. But we really need to get past this idea that supporting the voice means pushing. It's not support, and it doesn't help the voice.
I think that in Hong Kong, I'm a voice teachers in Hong Kong and also singing teachers in Hong Kong too. I mean, every days when we teach students, we tackle that same issues. I mean they will think about what is support and everything. And I'm just wondering, for Emery Speed, can you just give us a idea for people they might not. First of all, I should say that, there is a big movement in here. The voice training development changed rapidly for this past 10 years. Moving towards, for example, it's like, we talk about more about the anatomy and also the physiological of how our voice work in terms of comparing the past that we are more imagery, more guessing. But how can we prepare students or the coming participants when they come into a SDL level 1 and 2 course? What are they expecting? What are they expecting? Are they expecting a lot of practical work or knowledge? Or actually we need the knowledge to support what we're doing instead of just doing or just understanding? How can we, in level 1 and 2, accommodate these two things?
Well, in the first instance, we need to understand something about the theory, and
Mm,
for me, it matters when it informs practice. So for me, as a voice and singing teacher, as a vocal coach, as a performance coach, acting coach, what I understand has to be practical. I have to be able to practically apply it,
practical.
because it's no good if we have information that is only theoretical. I mean, that is
Mm.
interesting, but it doesn't help us when we're working with actors and singers who need answers to problems. So once we understand the theory, we translate that into practice. What Estill gives us, this is unique. It's a kind of reverse engineering. It
Mm.
changes how you hear. And so we understand the conditions needed to produce a high pitch, for example. And this is once again based on physiology and acoustics. So one of the examples that I'll give people is put your hands on the larynx or on the Adam's apple for men. Put your fingers here. Prepare to sing or speak your lowest note. Everyone just prepare that. What do we feel the larynx doing? Dropping. Before we've made any sound. Before we've made any sound, there is movement. Put your fingers here. Prepare to sing or speak your highest pitch. Most impressive. What do we feel the larynx doing? Rising. There are conditions needed for the vocal folds to do their job. And so what Estill tells us that when we create the right conditions, this is when it feels easy. But it's those conditions that are needed. So if people are having difficulties with range, the first thing that I check is, can the larynx rise? Now, people often say, yes, but pitch is vibrations per second. Yes, it is. But there are other conditions needed in order for the vocal folds to do their job. And one of the conditions needed is the larynx needs to be in the right position for the pitch, because pitch is also acoustic. You're not going to get a high sound with a big space. So if the larynx is too low, you're not going to be able to go high in the range. And equally, if the larynx is sitting too high, we're not going to be able to go low in the range. So we need the larynx to move in a very controlled and stable way, and that's what our Estill siren is for. When we make a slide, a pitch glide on an NG, the sound that we find at the end of the word sing, keeping it really consistent, nice, clear, quiet tone consistent, very controlled movement of the larynx. And this is one of the first things that we do to make sure that we are fulfilling one of the prime conditions needed for easiest access to the whole range. So on our level 1 and 2, we'll be doing a little bit of the anatomy, a little bit of science, in a very, very practical way. Lots of practical exercises. We'll be breaking up into small practice groups that will be guided by you and some of our other colleagues there.
Yeah.
And for our Chinese speakers, Cantonese and Mandarin, we'll be offering translation of key terms for you. I'll be presenting in English. I'll be attempting some of the anatomical terms in Cantonese with a little bit of help from Hong and some of my colleagues.
or those that we are using the English as well, but we'll prepare the Cantonese and Chinese for you as well.
Yeah. But lots of practice. It's a dense course. It's immersive. It's a lot of fun. And voices change. Voices change a lot. And 5 immersive days of really detailed practical training.
What about change of genre? I mean, transformation from classical to musical theater. Can you share some knowledge and or experience with us today?
Yes, I mean the where I work here in London, I work on the musical theatre course at the Royal Academy of Music, and here in London, the Royal Academy of Music is the UK's oldest classical conservatoire, and Mary Hammond, my dear friend and wonderful colleague, established the first postgraduate musical theatre course in the UK at the Royal Academy of Music in 1994, and asked me to teach the actor's voice there, and actually to get Estill into the curriculum at a time when there weren't a lot of teachers teaching it. So she showed tremendous vision and foresight, and I was able to also, many of my colleagues there become very, very good friends, came and did Estill courses with me and with Joe Estill. So what we have is a similar vocabulary but different ways of teaching, and that's very, very important, because Estill voice training is not a technique, it's a model of function. So once we understand the different structures that contribute to voice production. So before I answer your question about shifts in genre, when we start to talk about the different structures that we can control, the example that I always give is of the soft palate. Who's been told to lift the soft palate as a singer? In an actor, most people will lift their hand. So how have we been told to do it? Often it's by dropping the tongue. And by dropping the tongue and dropping the larynx, that's going to influence the sound. But the truth of the matter is, in a different way to just influencing whether the sound is nasal or not. So the soft palate is the back door to the nose. When the soft palate is low, sound comes down through the nose. When the soft palate is lifted, it doesn't come down through the nose. But that control over the soft palate we need in speaking and singing. Whatever genre you're working in, whatever language, whatever culture, that control does not determine the genre. You may use it in a particular genre, but it doesn't determine genre. And this principle is true for all of the different components that we identify in Estill and practice them, so that once we understand that, you can apply it to any genre. So Estill voice training does not, it is not, the training is separate to a stylistic standard. We're not just training to make one sound. Now,
Mm,
we do know what the stylistic standards are of different genres. This is very, very important. And there are very, very clear differences. So, one of the things that we can see for a lot of classical singing is that there is a certain kind of consistency of tone that is not the same as we need in musical theatre. It is different. And this is one of the things that you can spot training when you look at someone who's trained classically and then wants to move into musical theatre. Makes the sound a little bit oversung. And I have examples of this. It's a different genre, it's a different style. And you can hear something similar with musical theatre performers when they want to shift over into something a little bit more classical. It's entirely possible to sing both with training, but how we use the voice is fundamentally different. And these stylistic elements, the use of vibrato, for example, is also very, very different. The thing is too, when we talk about musical theatre, there is such an incredible range of sounds now within musical theatre. There is something within classical singing that we can always identify as being part of classical singing. Of course, there are different setups and different proportions, if you like, of the elements for classical singing. But and it is, I wouldn't want anyone to think it's just one thing within the classical world at all. But there is a consistency there that is not the case within musical theatre. So we need a bigger range of sound. We're using the sounds in a different way. One of the big differences too, as I said, is the use of vibratos. We're not talking about early music and classical singing. There's much, much less use of vibrato. And because vibrato, I would argue, makes us listen to the voice. And so often in a musical theatre song, you start off with something that's very close to speech, particularly in a traditional book musical. You're looking at Stephen Sondheim or Rodgers and Hammerstein or Jason Robert Brown, where you have spoken dialogue, there is underscoring, and then you move into singing. And particularly with musicals of both Rodgers and Hammerstein and Stephen Sondheim and Stephen Schwartz, that transition has to be really seamless. They don't want a sudden announcement, now I'm singing. Because the songs, particularly from Rodgers and Hammerstein, the songs are part of the dramatic development of the scene. They are part of the narrative journey of the character. They're not a musical entertainment. I mean, they're part of the entertainment, but they fulfill a dramatic purpose, and that it means that the way that we use the voice in musical theatre has to reflect that transition from spoken dialogue. So we go into singing too soon, we suddenly draw attention to the voice as opposed to what's actually happening dramatically.
fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, people. I mean, I see some people online at the moment. But anyway, I will put this a live chat into documented. We'll put it on the IG, Instagram. We share with Anne-Marie Speed. I might add some translation on it for people in Hong Kong if they want to get more clear about what Anne-Marie Speed talking about today. So Anne-Marie Speed will be in Hong Kong. Announce again. Anne-Marie Speed will be in Hong Kong in August and September, the first week of September. There will be a level 1 and 2 course and also 2 master classes. One is responsive breathing. The other one is from classical to musical theater. So I hope that, I mean, people, if you catch the live chat tonight, remember this time and come to join the course. I mean, because that is life changing for me as a voice teacher. I always said that, I mean, it's life changing for me as well, because I mean, there is more insights that we need to know. And also for voice training development, actually, I mean, there is a big move out there. I mean, from traditional way to a more scientific, or we say more evidence based. We know exactly what we're doing and what we are practicing, instead of, I mean, guessing what you need or what you can do. So thank you, Anne-Marie. And
Pleasure.